In this video, I'm going to talk about why hardware as a service is a requirement when you're selling fine dining establishments and big restaurant clients. This edition of the Merchant Sales Insight is sponsored by Lavu Point of Sale. Last week, I was talking about selling quick serve restaurants. This week, I want to talk about fine dining restaurants, and I want to dig in much deeper into this idea of hardware as a service when it comes to the fine dining restaurants, the big, bars, nightclubs, whatever it is. Just when you have these big food service businesses that have a lot of really complex requirements, hardware as a service becomes not just a nice to have, it really, in my opinion, becomes a necessity as you get out there and go to market. And so what is hardware as a service? Okay, well, hardware as a service is just like software as a service, except it's hardware. Okay, what is software as a service? Well, many of you watching this video, you might be old enough like myself. I'm almost 40. You can remember a time when buying software meant you bought a disk, right? And you inserted that disk and you downloaded this software onto your computer and you paid maybe $100, maybe $5,000, right? Depending on what it was. But you paid for the software and then you downloaded it onto your computer and you owned that version of the software. Now, what would happen over time, of course, is that software would become kind of obsolete, right? So you'd have to go spend another $1,000 to get the new version because you owned the version that you bought, right? If the software broke down, well, that was kind of your problem, right? You bought the software, right? If you got another computer and you have to install it on another computer, well, depending on your license, you might not be able to do that, right? So it was this very kind of limiting thing. Well, what happened over time is, of course, technology companies found a much better way called software as a service. So you don't actually own the software, you don't download the software, but instead you get software as a service. Usually it's cloud-based or you're logging in online or something like that. And so you have this software and you pay for it every month. You don't pay a big amount up front. You pay for it every month. And the trade-off is that whenever updates come out, you get those updates. New features come out, you get those features, right? If something breaks, well, you just call the software company and it's their job to fix it because it's not your software. You're kind of like renting the software, right? You're using the software as a service. Well, we are at that exact same inflection point now with hardware. Now we're using hardware as a service. So this kind of legacy model that is still pervasive. I mean, I would say probably still 85% of point of sale deals that are done today are done with hardware as a cost, as like an asset. You buy the hardware, you spend anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000, maybe $50,000, depending on how big the business is and how many stations they need, how many locations they have. And they pay this one-time amount and then they have this hardware. But the new model is hardware as a service. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that the hardware doesn't belong to the business owner. The hardware belongs to the technology company. So, as an example, our sponsor, Lavu Point of Sale, they implemented this model and they have seen sales go through the roof. Why? Because business owners love the concept. Not only does it help their cash flow that they don't have to pay for the hardware up front, but it also puts their mind at ease when they're like, you know what? This is not my hardware. This is Lavu's hardware, right? So I'm just paying a monthly fee to have hardware at my business, and it's up to Lavu to make sure the hardware works, right? And I can get whatever hardware I need because I'm just paying this monthly amount depending on the hardware, but I don't have to do some huge upfront investment of like, well, I also need this other printer. Well, that's going to be an extra $700. It's like, no, there's a monthly amount and you just have this amount, right? So hardware as a service is, again, the same concept as software as a service, where we're making hardware a much better deal for the business owner because long-term for them, they are, feeling like, hey, I've got this hardware, but it's not mine. I'm using this hardware as a service. It just works a lot better. But there's another big benefit to hardware as a service, and that is in the sales approach, okay? So we're not only eliminating the upfront cost, we're also making it possible through companies like Lavu to where we can actually eliminate the hardware cost. So if you're selling a restaurant, you're doing maybe their dual pricing program or something like that, and there's a lot of margin built in, well, you may decide that you don't even, you're just going to offset the cost. You're not going to charge them anything for the hardware. And the way you can do that is the way it's set up with Lavu. And I want to explain this. I think the industry needs to understand it better. When you think about hardware cost, rather than think about this one-time cost, think of it as a Schedule A cost. That's how hardware as a service should work in this reseller model, okay? So the idea would be, I would need, 3 stations, 2 printers, a cash drawer, whatever. And, normally that might cost $12,000. Well, maybe that's going to cost you $329 a month on a hardware as a service model or whatever, right? Whatever it's going to be. There's no specific numbers, but that's the idea, right? Well, what happens is now that agent has a $329 Schedule A cost, just like if they were going to do a $5 on file fee or something like that, right? And they have the ability to do what they've always been able to do, right? You either pass it on to the merchant or you eat it, right? Now, in most cases, of course, you just pass it on to the merchant. They pay their $329 a month. But what if that restaurant is a 3-location restaurant and the combined volume is $300,000 a month, and you sold them on dual pricing at a 4% flat rate? Well, guess what? You're making $6,000, $7,000 a month in residual or margin on this account. $6,000, $7,000 in margin. You're getting paid, with Lavu, they do an 80% lifetime vested residual split. So you're making thousands of dollars a month. Well, if they're kind of still like, well, I don't know if we want this piece of hardware. I don't know if we want that one. And I don't know about this. And what's the price again? What if you just said, hey, I tell you what, if you move forward and give me a 3-year agreement that we're going to stick with Lavu, for 3 years with me, how about I just cover the cost of the hardware for you and we'll just throw it in at no cost, right? You can do that. Why? Because it's just a Schedule A cost. You just eat it. It just comes out of your residual. So now instead of getting, $5,000 a month, you're going to get $4,700, right? So, and these numbers are not like pie in the sky. It's incredible talking to Celine, the CEO at Lavu, how many deals resellers in our industry have brought to them. And with that 80% split, because they're on dual pricing, they're getting a huge, huge commission off of these deals because it's a 2-3 location fine dining restaurant that needs a really, complex system that's got all the various features and everything that they need. So if you're looking for selling fine dining restaurants, selling, more complex food service businesses, big companies that really need a robust system, right? Even smaller fine dining establishments, like they want a legitimate system. They want something that they can really sink their teeth into that has a lot of features that's going to compete with Toast and all these other ones. Lavu's been around for a long time. They've got all those feature sets, but they also have this hardware as a service as a Schedule A cost, which allows you to sell them either by passing that cost on or by eating that cost. If you're not selling with Lavu and you're just in the industry, let me encourage you to think more carefully, more strategically about hardware as a service. It's a fantastic model, and it's one that all of us should be adopting. If you'd like to learn more about Lavu, head over to ccsalespro.com/Lavu, L-A-V-U. That's ccsalespro.com/Lavu. You can learn more about their reseller program. My name is James Shepard. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.